Well, folks, another day, another reason that Lindsey Graham thinks that America should bomb Iran. News broke early yesterday that some Syrians apparently had launched a drone strike on some Americans in Jordan. And of course, who is to blame other than Iran? So yes, people from one country bombed some American soldiers who were in another country, and a fourth country is the one to blame. You just can't make this crap up. And here's what disgusts me. So many Americans are still buying into this. I mean, how stupid do you people have to be? You see all of these soldiers scattered around the Middle East, particularly Iraq and Syria, two countries which are allied with Iran against the United States. Iraq is kind of a special situation because the U.S. are the ones responsible for installing Iran's allies, in charge of that country. The Iraqi government kind of has to maintain somewhat of a good relationship with the United States because America's the whole reason that they're in power. But when it comes to Syria, the U.S. has been trying to overthrow the Syrian government for over a decade, and the Syrian government has never consented to Americans entering their country. And so every American soldier, I should say, currently occupying Syrian soil is an invader. And so certainly any attack on Americans inside of Syria, by any reasonable standard, would be considered an attack, an act of self-defense. But this situation is a little different, and I should point out 3 Americans died, oh, big whoop, I mean, everyone is bending over backwards to, say that, oh, this is so sad, oh, wow, 3 Americans died. Of course, yes, it's always sad when people die. But I can't imagine anything more out of touch and ridiculous than to cry over 3 dead Americans when Americans are killing people who actually live in these countries and who are not, necessarily, soldiers, just regular people who get slaughtered by the Americans day in and day out. But, we're supposed to cry because 3 American volunteer soldiers, people who signed up to be in the military, were killed in the line of duty. And what was that duty they were carrying out? Oh, yeah, it was occupying a foreign country and indiscriminately bombing random villages, weddings, cafes. The only role that these soldiers over in the Middle East are serving is to go and abuse the local population until the locals get so upset and so angry and humiliated that they lash out and that they retaliate against the United States, even though they know that the U.S. is a much more powerful force. And they say, you know what, we just can't take it anymore, and we have to fight back. And then what happens? Well, 3 Americans get killed, and we're supposed to be told, like, this is some great attack on America. This is our next Pearl Harbor. This is why we need to invade Iran. Because, 3 Americans were murdered, don't you know? It's like, oh, wait, where were those Americans? Oh, well, apparently they were in Jordan. It's like, on the Syrian border. It's like, oh, well, what were they doing there? Even if they were, in fact, in Jordan, which has been disputed, though I haven't seen any evidence one way or the other. So at this point, I have no problem just sort of taking their word for it and saying, okay, well, they did say it was on the border. Okay, so it's on the Jordanian side of the border. Does it make that big of a difference if these soldiers were on the Jordanian side of the border, or if they were, in fact, across the border in Syria at the Al-Tanf base where we know there are Americans? We already know there are Americans stationed inside of Syria anyway. And so if you have Americans who happen to be just on the other side of the border in Jordan, I don't see, if you're a country repelling an invasion, I don't see why you would treat them any differently. If there are, if you have people who are invading your country, and some of their forces are inside your border, some of your forces are like right on your border, it's a distinction without a difference. If you're an American soldier stationed just on the Syrian border inside of Jordan, most likely you're doing something related to the ongoing invasion and occupation of Syria. And so, I'm not going to pretend that I'm happy that anyone's dead, okay? But I'm not going to cry about it either. Just like I don't cry when you have a bunch of people over there that I hear about that get blown up every day. I'm not going to cry over those people, because it happens all the time. This is the reality of trying to have a global empire and occupying far-flung random countries that want nothing to do with you. If you want your soldiers to be safe, well, maybe get them out of there. That's a pretty simple solution. There's no other country on Earth that could possibly be as arrogant as the United States to send an invasion force to another country and then pretend and cry and play victim when your invasion force incurs casualties. Either accept the casualties and move on with your nefarious activities, or get your people the hell out. What is this? Where you go? I mean, it's just... I just don't... this is why I think people don't respect the American military. How do you have respect for a group of people, for a military force that believes that they have the right to invade, occupy, bomb, and terrorize any country on the planet without facing casualties? Because, what are they doing there anyway? If you ask former President Trump, they were there to take the oil. That's why he left troops in eastern Syria. I don't know if that's still what Biden is doing. I know that at one point there were American oil companies running the oil fields in eastern Syria, plundering Syria's oil wealth. All of the oil fields in Syria, to my knowledge, are controlled by the United States. And again, Syria's been cut off from its own oil supply for probably an entire decade. All of that wealth plundered by American soldiers. Any local resistance annihilated. And these people want to cry about Iran. Here's the thing: as the years go by, I have less and less sympathy for the rank and file soldiers in the U.S. military. Because it was many years ago, and they still try and tell this lie. The lie was, you sign up for the military, and you don't take a lot of pay. That's certainly the case. You don't make very much money as a soldier, as a grunt in the military, but you're protecting your country. That was the idea. That you're not going to get paid a lot, but you're going to go into the military, and if the America's ever attacked, you can protect your country. That was what we were told. And a lot of people buy into that lie. A lot of people find out that it's a lie once they're in. But at this point, you don't have to join the military to figure out that it's a lie. You just have to look at with your own eyes. We have the internet now. We have all this documentation. We have video evidence. We have photographs. We know exactly what the U.S. military does. The U.S. military has not been in the business of protecting the United States since at least, the 1930s? That was the last time probably that you could argue that the U.S. military was, even back then you had the occupation of the Philippines, but still the United States was not the global empire that it would become. And of course, back then, up through the Vietnam War, we had a conscript army. Now it's all volunteers. And so you have the ability to know exactly what you're getting into and to know exactly what you're going to be asked to do. And very little of it has anything to do with protecting America. What is going on in eastern Syria, according to what we've learned, from President Trump when he was in office at the very least, is textbook war for oil. And so, if you sign up at this point, I don't know what you're doing. I really don't. People are pretty ignorant, and propaganda is really strong, so I shouldn't just assume that people are signing up for the military because they want to fight a war for oil. By the way, for wealth that they themselves are not going to get to take part in. It's gonna, it all goes to the likes of, Exxon and companies like that. And that's kind of like the best case scenario. That's assuming that they really are trying to serve some kind of purpose. But it could be worse. Rather than this just being a war for oil, it could just be that all of these troops are there as a tripwire, and that they're being used as bait, so that as soon as some of them are killed like this, the regime has an excuse to attack Iran. Because, like I said, it's Iran, based on everything we've been told, is not responsible for this attack, at the very least. The Biden administration themselves says that, this is one of those Iran-backed militias. Those Iran-backed militias like, the Iraqi army? The Iraqi army is a Iran-backed militia? Or do they mean one of these so-called Iran-backed militias that are fighting the American occupation in Syria? Or are they referring to the Syrian military itself, which would be an Iran-backed militia? And I forget who it was, but lots of people have pointed out the hypocrisy. No one ever refers to Israel as a U.S.-backed militia. They don't talk about, look at these U.S.-backed forces committing genocide in Gaza. The U.S.-backed militias just blew up another church. You never hear stories like that. But no, by definition, anyone who is not a CIA puppet is a so-called Iran-backed militia. And so every time that Americans face any pushback, remember, Americans are not attacked in the Middle East. Americans are not welcome in the Middle East, for the most part, not in the places where they're operating. I mean, there are certain countries, like Qatar, that host U.S. bases willingly. But most of the places where you're going to see American soldiers in danger, they're in danger because they're in foreign countries that are not welcome to them, that they are not welcome in. So anyway, with that said, I hope that this peters out and doesn't continue to escalate, but things have just been getting worse and worse and worse since October 7th and the start of the war in Gaza, and hell, even going back to Ukraine and all that. Things just keep getting worse and worse. And so maybe tomorrow or the next day I'll try and just remind everyone why a war with Iran is such a bad idea, and why it would be a disaster. In fact, I just think that the United States at this point is flat out not strong enough to fight a war against Iran. I think it would be a humiliation. So with that said, I will see you folks back here in the next one.